And I feel like this is an immaturity that conflates the sensual, as in of the senses, with sexual, as in of erotic nature. Because yoga is sensual. You feel through the senses. There's a feeling in the body that brings presence, aliveness. The neurological effects of yoga is to bring increased sensitivity into all the fibers of the muscles. So you feel everything more. So there's an aliveness, a wakefulness, a presence, which is rooted in an awakening of the senses. And if this gets conflated with sexuality and then everything becomes eroticized, I think that this is an immaturity of the mind and honestly a misunderstanding of what yoga really is.
That's Kino MacGregor, and this is the Yoga Life podcast. Hello and welcome back. Hope you had a nice week. This week I have with me Kino MacGregor. If you're not familiar with Kino, she is an author. She's one of the youngest certified teachers in the Ashtanga method. She's also one of the few yogis to have earned her certificate in India directly from the founder, Pattabhi Jois. I had heard a few weeks ago that Kino was coming to Dublin to teach a weekend of workshops. I'd never tried Ashtanga before, so I thought, why not learn from Kino? There's no better person. And it didn't disappoint. It wasn't easy. In fact, some of it was quite frustrating, especially the seated forward folds. But that's part of the process, isn't it? I didn't know much about her until I met her. And I thought, why not send her an email requesting that she come on my podcast since I'm going to the workshop? And lo and behold, she and her team replied back to me saying that they'd be happy to. So it just goes to show you that if you are a yoga teacher and you're self-employed, it's worth taking the shot and always asking, because you never know what might happen. So yeah, Kino took time in between the breaks to stroll down to my car, and there we casted. It was good fun. We talked about her background, her thoughts on physical adjustment, sensuality versus sexuality, and even religion. So Kino was like really, really nice, really friendly, very talkative, and she has a really infectious laugh, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. Kino would like to offer 1 month free membership to OmStars for all the Yoga Life listeners. Simply enter the promo code Kevin Boyle Yoga in all caps when you log into OmStars, and you'll get a free month of online videos and tutorials. So there you go. Hope you enjoy the podcast. If you do, please leave it 5 stars on iTunes and Stitcher. Thanks. Hey Kino, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about you?
It's going good. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I've gone straight into podcast mode. So do you know, little confession, well, not really a confession, but that was my first ever Ashtanga class.
Wow, how'd you do?
I found it great. It was really good fun. I liked the jumping through and loads of chaturanga. I love that. But the seated forward folds is really difficult for me.
They're difficult, yeah.
Because I find sitting in lotus difficult.
Right. So actually that would be a great practice for you. Because, in the Ashtanga method, we try to actually go and look directly at the things that are difficult for us. And so those contain sort of like the biggest lessons. So if the seated poses are all really, really difficult for you, the inclination is kind of like, oh, right, that was really hard for me, so I don't want to do that. But in the Ashtanga method, the teaching, the logic is actually, hey, those poses are really challenging for you. Great, this is a perfect practice for you.
Yeah.
Because it offers the most possibility of transformation.
That's actually quite interesting, the way, from what I know about Ashtanga, the teacher essentially tells you when you're ready for the next pose or to move on.
Yeah, in the most traditional way, because I kind of feel like in the introduction to the Ashtanga method that all of the poses and like half the primary series, maybe even the full primary series, can relatively be made accessible for most people. You know, like you, with someone that's in a background in practice, can come into the Ashtanga, primary series and, do your best, and you can leave with a feeling of inspiration. But beyond that, when you get into second series or the advanced series, where the poses are just so challenging, then you really need that direct relationship with the teacher. So the teacher says, okay, now for your body, you're ready for the next one, and then it's really individual.
And I love the way there is that individual attention. That even yesterday when you gave me that adjustment in plow, my knees behind my head, and you pushed my knees down, it was real firm with purpose. You gave it, and this is something that interests me. I'm a full-time teacher now, and in Ireland there's a bit of a grey area around physical adjustments, touching people, because we're quite, I say we, I mean I'm English but I have Irish parents. They'll accept me one day here. But like, and being a guy, we're a Catholic, very Catholic country, so we're a little bit repressed in terms of affection, or however you want to say it, and so I find that if Ashtanga offers good physical adjustments, there's loads to learn there for me to do more Ashtanga. Because I mean, what are have you noticed that there's becoming a teacher shying away from physically adjusting people?
Well, I mean that's kind of an important topic of conversation. I would say that in the United States, there are an equal number of teachers that are afraid to touch students and have shied away from physical assists, not so much from, say, the religious aspect. It's that, the United States is definitely not a Catholic country, but I would say that in the United States, people are afraid of lawsuits. People are afraid, if I touch the student, maybe they get injured and then they're going to sue me. So, there's that. Then there's also the recent kind of expose and revelation of sexual assault by yoga teachers, from all different genres and all different methods of yoga. So it's a valid concern. However, at the same time, the flip side of that is touch is so healing. We come to the practice because we have lived our lives sort of disembodied. Our consciousness has zoned out and escaped from our bodies, and then we come to the practice, and our biggest potential of healing is to reconnect with our bodies, to bring a sense of embodied presence back into our lives. And sometimes verbal instruction is great, visual instruction is great where you demonstrate, but sometimes it doesn't bring the kinesthetic intelligence. So as a student, that sometimes you raise your arm and you feel that the arm is in the right place, and you feel you've followed the instructions. You've done your best. You've followed the technique and talked to your shoulder blade and activated this muscle and sent this over here, and you're breathing and you're focusing, and then your teacher comes and gives you an assist, and it changes your whole perspective.
Definitely.
So there's this intimacy of the body, which I think is a fundamental feature of the efficacy of the path of yoga, right?
But I think separating touch from, trying not to make it seem sexualized, if that's the right word.
Absolutely,
is what people find confusing. Sometimes they feel like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And I feel like this is an immaturity that conflates the sensual, as in of the senses, with sexual, as in of erotic nature. Because yoga is sensual. You feel through the senses. There's a feeling in the body that brings presence, aliveness. The neurological effect of yoga is to bring increased sensitivity into all the fibers of the muscles. So you feel everything more. So there's an aliveness, a wakefulness, a presence, which is rooted in an awakening of the senses. And if this gets conflated with sexuality, and then everything becomes eroticized, I think that this is an immaturity of the mind, and honestly a misunderstanding of what yoga really is. I mean, I've had this so many times myself, being a female teacher, putting my leg behind my head in videos where I will get all of these comments from men who don't practice yoga, sexualizing an instructional video where I'm teaching people how to put their leg behind their head. And it'll be everything from really lewd, graphic comments that you would expect to see on, an X-rated website or something like that, or just like really kind of childish but sexual comments that, really show that the person's not there, to learn yoga. And then I think myself, if I kind of feel like the true student of yoga, when you're putting your leg behind your head or trying to put your leg behind your head or doing the actual practice, the idea of sex is so far from your mind. Like I'm not feeling sexy when I'm putting my leg behind my head. I'm just there feeling my hip joint, And I've spoken this over with the male teacher, a friend of mine, and he said that we work through like practice is such a personally intimate space, and many people have self-hatred, self-loathing, and body image issues. So in your practice, sometimes from the outside of someone who doesn't practice, it may be suggestive sexually, but when you're in there, you're feeling your hip. It doesn't necessarily mean you're loving your hip. You could be meeting, your body image issues. You could be feeling self-loathing. You could be feeling so much stuff that you're working through in your practice, so that really the last thing on your mind is sexual. So, I mean, in that sense, I kind of feel like any teacher that's violated that in a student is just not acceptable, because we, as yoga teachers, have to create a safe space of practice. So what can we do, I think that it's on the individual teacher's personal responsibility to create that safe space. And if in any situation that an intimate relationship is desired with a student, I feel that's no longer your student anymore. Yeah. Like they have to stop coming to your class. So it's a big choice. I kind of feel like, hey, this is a student, I feel an attraction, and if you want to pursue that attraction, in my opinion, that person can no longer be your student if you're the teacher. Yeah. And the same thing's true with the students. Like if you're sitting there dreaming about a relationship with your yoga teacher, like I think that the student should recognize, hey, if I want this, I will no longer be this person's student, because this is an unfair power dynamic. If you try to if you have a relationship with your teacher, then it's very hard to ever be equals, right? So actually, my husband's Danish, and he told me that, and I don't know if this is still true because now we live in the United States, but at least when we first met, he said that in Denmark that it is illegal for students to be in a relationship with teachers.
In any occupation, like in any...
That's what he said. I mean, you need to check the facts on that now, because this is what Tim told me years ago, and laws change and whatnot. So I don't know, but it's because of the power dynamic. It's sort of a self-evident power dynamic where, the student will always be on unsteady ground. And then, for example, the relationship may be initiated, and the student may not feel stable enough within themselves to say no, and then they may be asked to do things, but because they put this person on a pedestal, they'll say yes, and in many ways their boundaries will be violated. I mean, I know, for example, there are things that I would do for my teacher that I would not do for anyone else on this planet.
What do you mean?
Well, if my teacher said to me, come over tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we're to do a pranayama class, I would be there. Okay. If anyone else on the planet said that to me, I would be like, 10 a.m. doesn't really work for me. Do you think we could do like 1, because I've got this other stuff to do in the morning? I will not present my needs as equal to their needs, to my teacher's needs, because I feel I'm a student, and I understand, like, what I want out of the teacher-student relationship is I want to surrender. I want to honor that. I want to recognize the relationship between the teacher and the student. So this will always put me in a position where, when my teacher asks me, I will do, or I will do my very best to do. Whereas as my friend, I will negotiate between equals. So this, this is pretty much the reason why a romantic relationship between a student and a teacher, can't happen successfully, I believe, until that relationship is no longer teacher and student. Because then, hey, you're in a romantic relationship with your teacher. Your teacher says, I want to move to a new country. And then, maybe you don't, but you don't say it because, hey, you respect them so much as a teacher. And then they're talking about how it's going to open up a new spiritual development for you. And then you go and, we wake up 10 years later and you're like, what happened? So I really see that, I've never had a relationship with a teacher, but I've definitely, when I first started the practice, I had many experiences where I've experienced the compromising nature of the power dynamic between teacher and student. And unfortunately, in a few instances, my boundaries were definitely violated. And then in a few other instances, I was able to kind of remove myself from the situation.
Yeah, and I think, as you said earlier, it comes down to a level of maturity. I've and because I think if you were a younger teacher and you were starting out, you may not have the maturity to draw that line if you met someone that you liked.
Yeah. And you may get, as a young teacher, you may also get kind of enamored with the attention that you're getting. There is, you might feel like, wow, this is awesome. All these people, they care about what I think, and they like me, and this one wants to take me out to lunch, and this one wants to take me out to dinner, and this one's giving me presents. Like, wow. And you may not be able to say no to that adoration. So it's a very fine line to walk, and this is something that I think every teacher needs a teacher. Because it's your teacher who'll put you in check. Like, you think you're the star of the world, and you think, like, students are worshiping at your feet and this kind of thing. Like, you need a teacher to put you in check, to make sure your ego is like, hey, you're just a person, you're just a student. You got your struggles too. If you end up thinking that, you're walking on a cloud and you're the be-all, end-all of the world, then I feel like either life is going to give you some type of reality check, or you can go practice with your teacher, and then they'll hopefully break down your ego a little bit.
Yeah. You talked about sensuality, and as in the senses. Yeah. It's so funny because when I hear that word sensuality, I think, sexy.
Yeah.
But talking about the senses, lately in classes, I've been trying to teach more back bends, and I've been cueing the buttocks, the glutes, the bum, however you want to say it. Yeah. And I've realised how awkward I feel talking about backsides. Right? So I'm like, squeeze your bum, and people are like, what the hell? But yesterday you went a step deeper. Yeah. We talked about the anus.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I actually have a whole class that we only talk about sort of the anus and the genitals and the perineum and all of that sort of stuff. It's like we spend 2 hours talking about that. And also the butt, and why we shouldn't be squeezing the butt. So. Oh,
okay. So, firstly, what's the why is there so much focus on the anus?
Right. Well, the pelvic floor, Yeah. So without the pelvic floor, we miss the support of our back, and you miss the entry into occupying the space of the pelvis, right? So we have the pelvis as this region which has been conquered, subjugated, dominated, and appropriated by others, particularly in the female body, right? So many women are cut off from their pelvises. They either feel like, oh, I can't feel my pelvis because I've had a C-section, or they're victims of sexual trauma, and they don't want to feel their pelvis because of their past experiences. Well, the yoga practice is like, hey, the path to liberation is to feel it all. So by getting down into the pelvis, we have the opportunity to dig up those old memories and bring them up for healing. By occupying the space of the pelvis, we bring aliveness into our root chakra, our sacral chakra, our seat of embodiment here on this planet. So we have an immense potentiality for healing in the energy body. It changes our body image consciousness to be able to occupy the pelvis, not as an object that we're trying to fit into a pair of jeans that somebody has designed to fit into a model's body, as an object that someone a potential suitor could find as attractive, or someone as a potential violator could see as, a victim or something like that. So it's empowering to reclaim consciousness in the pelvis. So this is something that's really important in the yoga practice, to be able to be intimate with yourself in that way. And then there's the physical benefits of, if you don't know how to activate your pelvic floor, you'll lose the support for your lower back. You won't be able to steer your body from your center of gravity. And finally, in terms of the energetics of what's happening, the pelvic floor around the anus, around the genitals, around controlling the bladder and the perineum, is your window into what's called Mula Bandha. And the Mula Bandha opens up the possibility to have increased energy flow in the body, to light what's called the inner fire, or Agni. So there's so many valid reasons to go in there.
Yeah, and also, you see the way I even asked that question, I laughed because I find it strange. Yeah. So I know that I have way more to learn, way more growth in terms of maturing, even in that, when it comes to subjects like that. And I think that people are, as you said, lack so much body awareness, particularly in the low, like the the genitals, that area. I mean, I had a lady on, shout out to Jenny Keane, she was on my 3rd episode, I believe, who teaches womb yoga.
Yeah.
And she told a story on the podcast that she had a tampon basically inside her for 2 months without knowing. And
Yeah.
like, because she was at a stage of her life where she was so disconnected from that part of her body.
Yeah.
And that was a turning point for her to be like, man, I really need to get in touch with myself. And I'm just not dissing Ireland, but I'm saying that, look at Irish dancing. I mean, the way people dance tells you a lot about their culture. Right? So we like, I remember, like, in Irish dancing, your hands are by your side. You move your legs up and down. You never move your pelvis. Correct me if I'm wrong in the Irish dancers, but you never move your pelvis. It's all legs up and down, arms straight, body straight. And then, I remember when Bryony Smythe taught this workshop, and she got us to twerk in it. And me and this other lad at the back of the class didn't know. She was like, move your pelvis that way, that way. We didn't know how.
Yeah.
We were so... And then when I was in Colombia, I'm going off on a tangent here, but why not? When I was in Colombia, there was... I remember these Spanish or Colombian girls were like, oh, do you want to dance with us? Me and my mate from Birmingham, and we're both like awkward English guys that can't really dance unless we're like at 10 pints. And we were kind of there sitting in the corner. We kind of froze. We didn't know what to do. And these 2 Colombian lads came over, just twirled them around and were moving their hips. And we looked at each other and went, what are we doing? We've got no game. Because we're so cut off from our genitals.
No, I hear you. I really hear
and
you.
I actually think that, because I'm trying to promote more yoga for men, particularly, and for men to... Because I think a lot of men go to yoga and they see loads of women and they either think of it as like, oh yeah, there's loads of birds there, this is great, get to have a look. Or they think of it as, it's not for me because I don't look like that.
Right.
Whereas if you can encourage people to come in and be more connected with trying to lose that mask of masculinity, and be able to have adult conversations about our body and build body awareness, the same way you were talking about on London Real. We have emotional intelligence. What's the other intelligence?
Well,
head intelligence.
Yeah, or there's different, there's different channels of information, right? So there's definitely there is an emotional intelligence and there's an intellect.
Intellect, yeah.
And they're quite different. So to intellectualize our feelings is not to feel our feelings. To intellectualize the body with academic knowledge or even like academic technique in the yoga practice is not to feel. We can think all of the affirmations we want. We can learn all the technique we want with our minds. But if it's not a reality in the body, there'll always be something disembodied about it. So the whole technique of yoga is to bring you back into being fully embodied. Because it's like this thing where, hey, if you're not in your body, then who is? Right? So who is? So what's in your body if you're not? Right? Well, then everything that's impacted you from culture, all of the messages and the subliminal messaging that we've gotten from mainstream media and ads and all that sort of stuff, all of the way things have been programmed into our minds from who were the stars of our high school, who were our college leaders, and these kinds of things, all of that stuff, that's going to be circulating until you arrive into your body and you inhabit every cell of your body, and then you become the master of your body, not with force and rigid discipline, but with love. Yeah,
that's massive. I still get people coming to my classes because I teach hot yoga, and I find that sometimes the people come and they feel like they're punishing themselves. They're like, I want to push it really hard. I want to, because I had a weekend, I've been, went on the piss or whatever, drinking loads, and now I want to like punish myself. They're treating it more like a workout as opposed to this is what my body can do, I can express it in this way, and treating it a bit of love and compassion. I think but we're still learning in Ireland. We're still evolving in the yoga world.
Anything that gets people to class, I think, is good. Because, hey, they can come in and say, hey, I want to punish myself. And you can be like, right, well, let's get started. Yeah. And then through the course of the class, you can gently guide them into, a different paradigm where there's no need for punishment. Yeah. Right.
Start talking about anuses.
I always find it interesting, right, in Christian countries. and Christian ethos, I wasn't raised with any religion, but I always find it interesting where people who believe in Jesus still have a desire for punishment.
Well, I think it's because you're told when you're born you're a sinner. So it's a bit like, because essentially how it works, I'm sure you know this, but like you're born, like now that you're born, just for being born, you already have original sin because of some chap called Adam who ate an apple, right?
Yeah.
And now you got to spend your life on your knees begging for forgiveness.
But isn't that done the moment you accept Jesus?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean?
It should be, but I think...
So that's what I don't understand. So it's like, okay, fine, good. So once you've accepted Jesus, if you believe that he died on the cross for your sins and that he was the ultimate price to pay, then there's no more punishment.
Well, I agree in theory, but then every week you go along. And me and my sister were laughing. This is terrible. Last time we went to Mass last Christmas. We only go once a year now,
Yeah.
which is a lot of what Catholics do. And if you actually listen to what the priest is saying, so he goes, give thanks to the Lord, and everyone says, it is right to give thanks and praise. It's real it is right to give thanks and praise. And then one other thing is, forgive me, Father, for what I've done and what I failed to do. So I can't win. Like, forgive me for like what I've done and what I failed to do. It's like he's got you at every angle, basically.
Yeah.
The original sin one is the Catholic Church in this country you've probably seen about the Pope who was here a couple of weeks ago. Pope was here a couple of weeks ago, and there's a big campaign, Nope to the Pope, saying nope to the Pope, I think it was, and it showed the crowds now for the Pope compared to 20 years ago, and it was a fraction. People are just, we have more information now. I actually think yoga is replacing the church.
Yeah,
for unity.
There's an interesting thing, right? There's the Organization of Institutionalized Religion, which over years has been in the hands of people in positions of power whose motivation, everybody. It's hard once you have entrenched power because then motivation is not always as egalitarian as one would hope, right? Mm-hmm. So we have that, and then we've got the teaching of Jesus, which seems to be quite at odds with so much institutionalized religion, and the institution of the way that the way that a relationship with God could really be.
Yeah, they've kind of, it's been hijacked a little bit and for power. So how are we doing for time? Right, 5 minutes. I've shamelessly stolen some quick fire questions from Larry King.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that should be fun.
So these are I'll say designed. I like these because I ask you the question, then you just give your answer.
Okay.
And I don't respond to it. I just move on to the next question.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good to go. What would you be if you weren't a yoga teacher?
Oh gosh, if I could go back and be anything else, I think that I would have pursued a career in politics.
Okay. Who was your first kiss?
Like romantic kiss?
Okay.
I don't remember. I mean, the reason why I don't remember, and this isn't really a lighthearted answer, is because my first sexual experiences was rape when I was 11 years old.
Oh.
So I don't remember before that.
Okay. What's your biggest pet peeve?
That's a good question. What is my biggest? I don't know what my big. I don't know if I have a. I would. Maybe being too strongly opinionated about anything.
A person being too strongly opinionated. Okay, that's a good one. Not willing to listen to other opinions like that. If you could go back in time and have, not back in time. If you could have lunch with anyone from history, who would it be?
Anyone from history? Oh gosh. Well, from history, maybe Abraham Lincoln, and currently alive, President Barack Obama.
Shout out to Barack if he's listening.
Yeah, seriously, please, I'm available.
Two more questions then. Things people get wrong about you.
People think that either I'm all fluff or that I'm way too serious.
Okay. What's the one piece of advice you give yourself if you met yourself when you're 18?
Well, the one piece of advice that I would give is to just pause and breathe and think for myself and take a moment and really reflect on what it is that I want to do, and to not let anybody else's negative beliefs stop me from going forward. There are so many things that I wanted to do, but I guess I always felt like, oh, I'll never be able to do that because of this, because of that. So if I could go back, I would say, don't internalize anyone else's negativity. If you've got a dream in your heart, then you should go and pursue it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Kino, you're a legend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so good.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week, I have with me Liz Costigan-Fleury, who is our very own, as in Dublin-based, yoga teacher and fitness guru. She is otherwise known as the Positive Fitness Project. So, she's on next week. She's a bundle of joy. That sounds weird. She's not a baby. She's a fully grown woman. And she's a very pleasant lady. And I hope you tune in next week, next Thursday, to listen to that episode. As always, if you enjoyed this one, please leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Have a powerful week. Namaste.